You know that moment when your whole life changes with a single phone call? Mine came at 2:07 a.m. on a Tuesday, jerking me awake in my corner suite at the Peninsula, New York. The Egyptian cotton sheets were still warm, the city lights were painting golden rectangles across my marble floor, and then my phone exploded with that shrill, demanding ring that cuts through sleep like a blade. The caller ID showed Mom, and my blood immediately ran cold. See, my mother never calls at 2 a.m. unless someone's dead or she needs something. And the tremor in her voice when she said my name, that wasn't grief. That was the particular brand of calculated concern she'd perfected over 34 years of managing my life from 3,000 miles away. Sam, listen carefully. That little studio apartment of yours in Tacoma, it's on fire. Little studio apartment. I sat up straighter against the Italian leather headboard, my mind instantly sharp despite the hour. My mother had this gift, this absolutely perfect gift for diminishing everything I touched. My little studio in Tacoma, my cute hobby business, my phase of independence. She talked about my life like I was a college student playing house with toy furniture. What she didn't know, what none of my family knew, was that the little studio apartment, burning down, wasn't mine to live in. The entire 52-unit building was mine to own. I'm Sam Avery, and for the last 5 years, my family has treated me like their well-meaning but financially struggling daughter who moved across the country to find herself in the Pacific Northwest. They send care packages filled with instant ramen and coffee shop gift cards. They offer to pay my rent during our weekly phone calls. They sigh with that particular brand of loving disappointment whenever I decline their dinner invitations because I'm working late again at that marketing firm. What they don't know is that there is no marketing firm. What they don't know is that I run Avery Capital Partners, a $40 million real estate empire spanning Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. What they don't know is that the phone ringing at 2:07 a.m. was about to expose every single carefully constructed lie I'd been living for half a decade. There was some kind of explosion nearby, Mom continued, and I could hear the barely concealed excitement threading through her concern. This was it. This was her moment to swoop in and rescue her poor, struggling daughter. Maybe it's time you gave up this whole independent living fantasy and came home where you belong. Fantasy. The word hit me like a physical slap, but here's what happened next that she couldn't have predicted. I reached for my laptop with one hand while keeping the phone pressed to my ear with the other. 3 screens lit up simultaneously, and this is where Mom's understanding of my little life crashed headfirst into reality. My security system wasn't some basic apartment setup. I'd invested $200,000 in a proprietary surveillance network designed by former NSA contractor David Chen. Motion sensors, thermal imaging, facial recognition software, and real-time threat assessment algorithms monitored all 27 of my properties simultaneously. The Willow Apartments alone had 14 HD cameras, 6 thermal sensors, and an AI system that could detect unusual heat signatures, unauthorized entry, and even analyze behavioral patterns for potential threats. It was the same system banks used for their vault security. It's not my studio apartment, Mom. I pulled up the thermal feed, my fingers flying across the custom dashboard that most CEOs would kill for. It's my building, I own the Willow, and someone's inside Unit 3C right now. The silence stretched so long I wondered if she'd hung up. Then she laughed, that bright, dismissive sound that had haunted my childhood. Sam, sweetheart, don't joke at a time like this. But I wasn't joking. The thermal camera showed a figure crouched by the baseboard heater, and the facial recognition software was already running analysis. Match probability, 97.3%. Identity, Jake Marshall, my ex-boyfriend, the man who'd walked out on me 6 months ago after I refused to co-sign his gambling debts. The same man who'd been living with my parents ever since, working his particular brand of charm on my mother while she enabled his financial irresponsibility. I switched into my work, voice the one that commanded boardrooms. Avery Capital Partners acquired the Willow 18 months ago through a complex acquisition involving bridge financing and tax credit optimization. 52 units, $15 million in insurance coverage, full smart building integration. My secondary phone buzzed, alert, accelerant detected Unit 3C thermal anomaly dumpster area. Now I understood the scope of what I was dealing with. While Mom continued her rescue fantasy on the phone, I was already 3 moves ahead. I speed dialed Carla Ruiz, my attorney and one of the sharpest legal minds in commercial real estate law. Sam. Carla's voice was instantly alert despite the hour. What's the situation? Potential arson at the Willow. I have the perpetrator on thermal imaging and facial recognition. I need a warrant strategy. Talk to me about evidence chain and jurisdiction. I walked her through the security system specifications, the AI-generated threat assessment, and the preliminary accelerant detection. Carla's mind worked like a steel trap. Within 15 minutes. We had a comprehensive legal strategy. Here's what we do, she said. The thermal imaging evidence is admissible under the plain view doctrine since it's your property. The facial recognition strengthens identity confirmation. I'll coordinate with Detective Sarah Kim at Tacoma PD. She specializes in arson cases and appreciates solid evidence packages. What about potential co-conspirators? We document everything: phone records, financial connections, housing arrangements. If your mother's been enabling this person, we need to understand the full network. Next call, Liam Park, investigative journalist for Pacific Business Weekly. 2 years ago, I'd given him an exclusive tip about municipal corruption in the Tacoma Housing Authority. Tonight, I was calling in that favor. Liam, I have a story that's going to break in the next 12 hours. Real estate fraud, attempted arson, family betrayal. Are you interested in exclusive access? Keep talking. I run Avery Capital Partners. 40 million portfolio, 27 properties. Someone just tried to burn down one of my buildings, and I have them on camera. The perpetrator has connections to my family that reveal a pattern of financial manipulation and enabling behavior. Liam's journalist instincts kicked in immediately. What's the business angle? I'm signing a $90 million acquisition tomorrow morning. This was time to sabotage that deal by destroying my reputation and creating insurance complications. Send me everything. I'll have the story ready to publish on your signal. The strategy was elegant. Let law enforcement handle the criminal case while I controlled the narrative. By morning, this would either be a story about failed sabotage that demonstrated my security system's effectiveness, or it would be about how I turned a crisis into a business opportunity. Either way, I was going to control every word that got written. My insurance rep Marcus Kim called back within an hour with preliminary assessments. This is where the sophistication of my business model really showed. Sam, your coverage is bulletproof, Marcus said. Comprehensive commercial property, business interruption, even malicious damage riders. But here's what's interesting: the damage pattern suggests this was meant to look worse than it actually is. Explain. Accelerant placement near the dumpsters, timing to maximize smoke and emergency response, but actual structural damage is minimal. Someone wanted maximum visual impact with minimum insurance payout complications. That's when I really understood Jake's psychology. This wasn't random destructive revenge. This was calculated to hurt my reputation without triggering the kind of massive insurance investigation that would reveal his involvement too quickly. But I knew Jake better than he realized. During our 2-year relationship, I'd watched his gambling addiction evolve from weekend poker games to daily online betting. What started as $5 sports bets became $100 losses, then $1,000 debt spirals. He'd lost his job at Henderson Marketing Group, maxed out 3 credit cards, and borrowed money from friends who'd eventually cut him off. The pattern was always the same. Jake would create a crisis, then use charm and manipulation to get someone else to solve it. He'd borrowed money from his brother, just until my commission check clears, convinced his sister to co-sign a car loan, my credits just temporarily messed up, and even talked his elderly neighbor into loaning him rent money. I'll pay her back double next month. When he'd moved in with my parents after our breakup, Mom had called it helping a young man get back on his feet. What she didn't realize was that she'd become his newest mark. He's such a hard worker, she'd told me during one of our weekly calls. He's been helping your father with the yard work and driving me to my doctor's appointments. He's looking for jobs every day. What she didn't know was that looking for jobs meant spending 8 hours a day at online casinos while she was at her volunteer work. The yard work and doctor's appointment drives were just enough contribution to maintain his image as a helpful house guest. But why arson specifically? That was the piece that revealed how deeply he'd planned this revenge. Jake knew my business model better than anyone. During our relationship, I'd explained how commercial real estate empires were built on reputation and trust. Insurance companies, lenders, and investors all evaluated risk based on property management track records. A fire, especially one that suggested negligent maintenance or inadequate safety systems, could trigger reviews of my entire portfolio. He'd chosen arson because he understood it would attack not just one building, but the foundation of everything I'd built. The sophistication of his plan actually impressed me, in a twisted way. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated exactly how sophisticated my defenses had become. While coordinating the response to Jake's sabotage, I found myself explaining my actual business to Mom for the first time. The conversation revealed just how completely my family had misunderstood my life. "Sam, I don't understand. How can you own all these buildings? Where did the money come from?" Fair question. Time for the full reveal. "Mom, let me walk you through Avery Capital Partners. I started 5 years ago with the insurance settlement from Grandpa's death, the money you thought I was wasting on moving to Seattle." I pulled up my portfolio dashboard and began reading her the numbers that defined my actual life. The Meridian Apartments in Seattle, 73 units, acquired for $8.2 million, current value $12.4 million. The Harbor View Complex in Portland, 45 units, mixed-use commercial space, acquired for $6.8 million, current value $11.2 million. The University District properties, 4 buildings, 156 student housing units, collective value $18.7 million. But how do you manage all of this? I have a team of 37 people. Jennifer Nakamura is my CFO, Harvard MBA, former Goldman Sachs analyst. Tom Rodriguez handles property management operations across all 3 states. Maria Santos runs our legal compliance department. David Chen designed our security infrastructure. And I have acquisition specialists in 5 different markets looking for the next opportunities. The Singapore deal I was signing tomorrow morning, that wasn't some lucky opportunity, it was the result of 18 months of market analysis and relationship building. The Pacific Rim hospitality market is exploding. I explained to Mom while simultaneously reviewing contract details with my team. Singapore is positioning itself as the gateway for American hospitality brands expanding into Southeast Asia. The property we're acquiring, the Marina Bay Heritage Hotel, sits on land that's going to triple in value over the next 5 years. My team had run comprehensive market analysis. Singapore's tourism industry was projected to grow 8% annually, luxury hotel occupancy rates were above 85%, and government tax incentives for foreign investment made the financial structure incredibly favorable. But $90 million, Sam, that's so much money. It's not my money, Mom. It's a consortium investment. I'm putting up $30 million in cash and equity, Singapore Development Bank is providing $40 million in financing, and Pacific Investment Partners is covering the remaining $20 million for an equity stake. My role is lead managing partner with operational control. For the first time in years, I heard genuine awe in my mother's voice. "You really built all this." I really built all this. But the conversation was interrupted by an alert that changed everything. Suspect in custody. Detective Kim called at 6:47 a.m. with news that made my entire night of strategic planning worthwhile. "Ms. Avery, we have Jake Marshall in custody. Your evidence package made this the cleanest arrest I've seen in 10 years. The thermal imaging, facial recognition, accelerant detection, and security footage created an airtight case. Jake's fingerprints on the tampered heater were just the cherry on top, but the real revelation came when Detective Kim read me the contents of Jake's phone, seized during the arrest. Text thread with someone named Ellen A. That you? No, that's my mother. Messages going back 3 weeks. She thinks she's so smart with her little business. Someone needs to teach her that family comes first. Maybe if something happened to one of her precious buildings, she'd remember where she comes from. My mother hadn't just been enabling Jake's plan, she'd been encouraging it. The betrayal hit deeper than Jake's arson attempt. This was the woman who'd raised me, who'd claimed to worry about my risky, independent lifestyle, actively conspiring to sabotage what I'd built. When I called her back with news of Jake's arrest, the conversation revealed the full scope of what I was dealing with. "I sent you my lawyer's number, Mom. You're going to need it." "What do you mean?" The police found text messages. You didn't just know about Jake's plan, you encouraged it. Silence. Then, in a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from her, I thought if something happened, you'd come home. You'd let us help you. Help me? The words came out sharper than I intended. You conspired with my ex-boyfriend to commit arson against my property because you wanted to help me? You were so far away, so independent. We missed you. We wanted you to need us again. That conversation lasted 3 hours and revealed decades of family dynamics I'd never fully understood. Mom's need to be needed. Dad's silent enablement of her controlling behavior. My brother Derek's resentment about my success. Aunt Margaret's comments about women getting too big for their britches. My independence hadn't just threatened Jake's financial schemes, it had disrupted an entire family system built around keeping me dependent and manageable. But the consequences were just beginning. The signing ceremony, postponed 1 week due to the investigation, became even more meaningful when we finally gathered at the Four Seasons Seattle. The ballroom glittered under crystal chandeliers as Pacific Business Weekly's cameras captured every moment. I wore a midnight blue Armani suit that cost more than my family's monthly grocery budget, my hair pulled back in a style that said "serious businesswoman" without apology. The Singapore Development Bank partners had flown in specifically for this ceremony. Chairman Liu Wei, Investment Director Sarah Tan, and Legal Counsel Michael Singh. The Pacific Investment Partners delegation included 3 executives whose combined portfolios exceeded $2 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announced, the signing of the largest hospitality acquisition in Pacific Northwest history, Avery Capital Partners' $90 million expansion into Southeast Asian markets. As I signed each page of the acquisition documents, Liam's story went live across multiple platforms. Exclusive. Seattle real estate mogul thwarts arson plot, closes $90 M international deal hours later. The piece was everything I'd hoped for. Detailed documentation of Jake's arrest, security camera footage, expert analysis of my company's growth trajectory, and industry praise for my crisis management skills. What Avery accomplished in 12 hours. The article quoted commercial real estate expert Dr. Jennifer Walsh, demonstrates the kind of operational excellence that distinguishes successful entrepreneurs from hopeful amateurs. Phone calls started immediately, investment offers, partnership proposals, media interview requests. By 10 p.m., my assistant had fielded inquiries from 3 major business magazines, 2 documentary filmmakers, and a literary agent who thought my story would make a compelling book. But the most important call came from Mom. "Sam, I've been watching the news coverage. I had no idea. I never understood the scope of what you'd built." "I know you didn't. Can you forgive me? Can we start over?" I looked out at the Seattle skyline through my penthouse windows, the city where I'd built an empire, while my family thought I was struggling to pay rent. That depends on whether you're ready to see me as I actually am, instead of who you need me to be. The next 6 months revealed the full consequences of that night's events. Jake was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to arson, property destruction, and conspiracy charges. His gambling debts, it turned out, totaled over $200,000 money he'd borrowed from increasingly dangerous sources. The arson attempt was as much about desperation as revenge. My mother faced her own reckoning. While she wasn't charged criminally, the text messages became public record during Jake's trial. Her friends at the country club learned that Ellen Avery Pillar of the community, volunteer coordinator, perfect suburban mother, had encouraged her daughter's ex-boyfriend to commit arson. "I've resigned from the hospital board," she told me during one of our new weekly video calls. "And the garden club. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not managing other people's lives." Dad, meanwhile, revealed that he'd been quietly proud of my success all along. "I looked up your company 2 years ago," he admitted. "I just didn't know how to tell your mother that she was wrong about you." The healing process wasn't simple or quick. Family therapy sessions via video calls, difficult conversations about control, trust, and the difference between love and management. Mom learning to ask about my business instead of assuming I needed rescue. Me learning to share my success without armor. But the business transformation was even more dramatic. The Singapore acquisition became the foundation for Avery International Holdings. Within 8 months, I'd expanded into Hong Kong, Sydney, and Tokyo. The Marina Bay Heritage Hotel's renovation became a case study in cross-cultural hospitality design, featured in Architectural Digest and International Hospitality Review. My team grew to 127 people across 6 countries. Jennifer Nakamura was promoted to President of International Operations. Tom Rodriguez became VP of North American Properties. Maria Santos expanded our legal department to handle international compliance requirements. The company that started as a way to prove my independence became a platform for creating opportunities for others. You know what I'm proudest of? I told Mom during our latest call as she toured my new Vancouver acquisition via FaceTime. It's not the money or the recognition. It's that we've created 400 jobs in 5 years, real careers for people, not just paychecks. She smiled genuinely this time, without calculation or concern. That sounds like the daughter I raised and somehow forgot to notice growing up. 1 year after the fire, I stood in the renovated lobby of the Willow Apartments, watching families move into upgraded units with smart home technology, enhanced security systems, and community spaces that hadn't existed before Jake's attempt at destruction. "You turned something terrible into something beautiful," said Mrs. Rodriguez from Unit 2A, her toddler balanced on her hip. "That takes real character. Real character." I thought about that phrase often now. The property had become a showcase for sustainable urban housing. Solar panels, rainwater collection systems, community gardens, and resident-owned businesses on the ground floor. What Jake had tried to destroy became a model for responsible development that other developers studied and replicated. But the real transformation was happening 3,000 miles away. Mom had started Therapy Real Therapy, not the kind designed to manage other people's lives. She was learning about codependency, control patterns, and the difference between loving someone and needing to be needed by them. "I spent 34 years trying to make you fit into my idea of safety," she told me during our most recent conversation. "I never asked what safety meant to you." Our relationship now was built on something neither of us had experienced before: genuine curiosity about each other's lives. She asked detailed questions about property acquisition strategies, international business development, and team management challenges. I shared stories about market analysis, cultural differences in hospitality expectations, and the satisfaction of solving complex financial puzzles. "Your father and I are thinking about visiting Singapore," she said last week. "We'd like to see the hotel you're renovating." "I'd love that. I'll show you the whole operation. And we promise not to offer unsolicited advice about your business decisions." We both laughed, but the promise was real. 2 years after that phone call at 2:07 a.m., Avery International Holdings was valued at $180 million. I'd been featured on the cover of Forbes Asia, named to Pacific Business Weekly's 40 Under 40 list, and invited to speak at the World Economic Forum about sustainable hospitality development. But the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. "The University of Washington School of Business would like to offer you an endowed chair position," Dean Patricia Sullivan explained during our meeting in my Seattle penthouse. "The Avery Chair in Entrepreneurial Development. You teach 1 seminar per year and mentor our most promising students." What would I teach? "Whatever you think they need to know about building something that lasts." I accepted immediately. My first lecture, titled "Building Foundations While Others Watch the Smoke," drew 400 students to a 200-seat auditorium. I told them about thermal cameras and legal strategy, about family dynamics and international markets, about the difference between proving yourself and building yourself. But mostly, I told them about the phone call that changed everything and how sometimes the greatest gift your enemies can give you is underestimating exactly how strong your foundation has become. "Success," I told those students, "isn't about convincing people you're capable. It's about building something so undeniably valuable that their opinions become irrelevant." After the lecture, a young woman approached with a question that took me back to my own beginning. "How do you handle family members who don't believe in your dreams?" I thought about that too. 07 a.m. phone call, about smoke rising from the willow, about Mom's laugh when I told her I own the building. "You love them enough to succeed without their permission," I said. "And you build something so solid that when they're ready to see it, there's no way they can miss it." 3 months later, that student started her own company. She sends me quarterly updates about her progress, and I think about the ripple effects of that terrible, wonderful night when everything changed. Jake served 4 years of his 6-year sentence before being released on parole. I heard through Mom that he'd completed addiction treatment and was working as a maintenance supervisor for a property management company in Ohio. He'd written her a letter not asking for anything, just acknowledging the damage he'd done and the pain he'd caused. I never responded when Mom asked if I wanted to hear from him directly. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as lessons than rebuilt as risks. But I did add one condition to my company's hiring practices: comprehensive background checks and addiction support resources for all employees. If someone wanted a second chance, they could earn it through demonstrated change, not familiar charm. Today, I'm writing this from my office on the 47th floor of the Columbia Center in Seattle, looking out at a city where I own 17 properties and employ 200 people directly. The Avery Foundation, launched last year, provides microfinance loans for women entrepreneurs starting their first businesses. My phone sits silent on the desk, no crisis calls at 2:07 a.m., no family members trying to manage my choices, no ex-boyfriends seeking revenge for boundaries they couldn't accept. Tomorrow, I fly to Tokyo to finalize our latest acquisition, a historic ryokan that we're converting into a luxury heritage hotel. Next month, it's Sao Paulo for a sustainability conference where I'm the keynote speaker. In the fall, Mom and Dad are visiting Vancouver to see the waterfront development that will house 300 families in affordable, environmentally responsible units. "I'm proud of you," Mom told me last week, and for the first time in my life, I believed she was proud of who I actually am rather than who she wanted me to become. "I'm proud of us," I replied. It took a fire to show us what we were really made of. Here's what I know now that I wish I could tell that woman who answered the phone in panic 2 years ago: the most powerful revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so strong, so valuable, so undeniably yours that the people who tried to keep you small have no choice but to look up at what you've become. And when they finally do, you'll be too busy building the next thing to notice. The little girl who used to apologize for taking up space burned away that night at 2:07 a.m. What rose from those ashes was a woman who builds empires and calls them home, who turns crises into opportunities, who knows the difference between being loved for who she is and being loved for who she's willing to pretend to be.